Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everyone's having a fantastic week. Last week, we talked about the world of nutritional supplements and how to choose the right labels. Hopefully, you found that information insightful and useful and have been able to put it to good use. This week, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and autism. And can some of these applications help you and your family potentially? It's no secret that we're definitely in the world of AI these days, and trends are showing that it's not going to go away anytime soon. I'm a big believer that technology can actually really help us and assist us with many applications in our daily lives. So why wouldn't it help people in the autism community as well? I started kind of delving in and exploring some of these apps a couple years ago just to help Drayson. Some of these apps I'm going to mention to you today are actually ones that we have used. Some of them I have not, but I do think that they are worth mentioning. So today we're just going to kind of talk about the different types of applications that you can use or apps that have an AI interface. These are mainly for Apple and Android. For different types of apps. So you will need to check with your provider to see which apps are available to you, whether you have an iPhone or an Android, because I guess there is a difference. I don't know. I always tease my husband because he's an Android user and I'm an iPhone user. So I always joke around when he says, I don't have that on my phone, but then he's okay putting it back in my face when I don't have it on my phone either. So anyway, but there's different types of apps. And the first one I want to mention is actually there's some new apps that have come out recently for screening for autism. So if you are a parent that maybe thinks your child might be autistic and you're not sure, and you want to talk to your healthcare provider, there are some apps out there that do provide, that can work as a screening tool. They do provide some insight. Now, it's imperative that you still work with your healthcare provider to get the confirmed diagnosis, but I do think that it's worth mentioning that there are apps out there for that. Sense to Know app is one that actually uses artificial intelligence to measure and weigh in on multiple behavioral indicators for people that have autism. It delivers scores that assess data quality to actually healthcare providers that you can actually send this data to the healthcare provider or show them this data, and it can specify the indicators contributing to its conclusions. It will actually then elaborate on why it's concluding that. And I think it's a really good tool, especially if you're a parent out there that thinks that your child might be autistic, but you're not sure, or you can tell that something maybe behaviorally is off and you're trying to make that determination. But like I said, it's imperative that you work with your healthcare provider to make sure that you're getting that confirmed diagnosis, because it will be important, especially if you decide to seek services. You will need a confirmed diagnosis for that. And I do encourage that. I highly encourage that. There are some apps also for learning grammar. We used a couple different with Drayson when he was younger. One was called Buddy Bear. It's a really good one. He preferred that one actually over the other app that I'm going to mention, which is ABC Mouse. ABC Mouse was great for learning grammar with Drayson, but he actually preferred Buddy Bear. Excuse me. Say that 3 times really fast. Buddy Bear, Buddy Bear. But both of these apps were beneficial to us. We have tried both, and that was the one that Drayson favored more when it came for the learning grammar piece of that app. There are also apps out there for social stories. iCreate is one of them. There's also a couple apps called Social Story Creator and Otsimo for special education. I really like the Otsimo app. That's one that we've used, and I'm going to mention it again, I think a little bit later on. They have a whole gamut of categories that you can choose from, not just social stories. But the social stories worked really well from Otsumo. That is also really great, especially if you're trying to curtail certain types of social stories. You can actually put them together so that it makes a social story for your kiddo to understand whatever it is you're trying to implement. So we've done social stories with Drayson about how to reciprocate a greeting, because Drayson's famous words are no and go away. So when I say hello to Drayson, a lot of times he'll say go away. And I think that's because he's anticipating a conversation that he does not want to engage in. So it's teaching him just to reciprocate back. So when I say hello, the natural thing to say back is hello. And so we created a social story for that, just so that he could understand when's appropriate to address somebody back, how to, say greetings, how to say hello, and how to say no thank you if you just don't want to engage in conversation. So check out apps for social stories. That's really great. And like I said, iCreate was actually the #1 rated one by consumers from some of the research that I looked into for that. There are apps for ABA. ABA Flashcards and Games is a really great app. I really like it because it focuses on emotions, and they do have ABA cards to help identify emotions. So if you're trying to just implement the basics about emotions, this is a great application that you can use that also invokes ABA flashcards. Questions. Believe it or not, this is a great application. I just stumbled across this, and I'm actually going to start using this with Drayson. It's called Question It, and it helps explain WH questions, which a lot of kids on the spectrum have trouble with WH questions. So what, where, when, those types of questions are very difficult for Drayson to understand and to answer. So this app is called Question It, and it explains WH questions with color-coded cards. And I love the concept of this because Drayson has identified, and I've mentioned some of this in my previous podcast episodes about colors, and Drayson has actually started off identifying emotion with colors, being able to tell us that he was angry was a red zone color. So I really like the concept of this because I think it will help to break down the questions better for him. And like I said, the name of this app is called Question It, and it explains WH questions with the color-coded cards. There's also emotional intelligent apps, and it's funny, I couldn't find too many, but one, especially if your kiddo's little, and I'll say age 7 or younger, Daniel Tiger's Gorific Feelings. Gorific. I feel like Tony the Tiger from Frosted Flakes. For those of you that know who Tony the Tiger is, you know what I'm talking about when he gives the grr and great. But Daniel Tiger's Gorific Feelings, that's a great app. We used this with Drayson when he was much younger, ages 7 or younger. This is a really appropriate app that you can use. And it was a great starter tool for us to really start with the emotional intelligence side of things for Drayson. Drayson is highly intuitive and has, I think, sometimes even more emotional intelligence than I do. And this was a great way for him to identify how to express some of that with his emotions. So check out Daniel Tiger's app. You'll probably get a big kick out of it yourself too. Focus timers for ADHD and autism spectrum disorder, those are really great. We just used our timers on our phone, but this is a little bit more of a ramped up focus timer. So if you can implement something that helps them to focus, if they're having trouble with that, this is a great app that you can use. This app called I'm On It Focus Timer, literally I'm On It Focus Timer. This app was actually rated as top choice among consumers from what I read in my research. So if you're looking for something to help focus with the ADHD component and autism, this might be an app that you might want to consider checking out. There's several reading and writing apps out there, but they are hard to find specifically for autism. They're great for neurotypical kids, but some of these apps are hard to find, especially for kids on the spectrum. But I did find one called Autism Read and Write Pro. This is one that we have not tried personally, but it did have really great reviews. And this is something that I'll probably consider trying to incorporate with Drayson as well, because he does have dyslexia. And so even though he's in dyslexia tutoring right now, what I hope is that we can use something like this to help him along the way as he's, growing up and working around the dyslexia. So Autism and Reading Write Pro is the name of that app. There's also apps for motor, cognitive, and communication. Atsimo, which I mentioned earlier, actually has some of these components in their application as well. This is part of the reason why I really like this app, is that it doesn't just have the social stories component. They do have things built in for motor, cognitive, and communication, which is really great. So definitely check out Atsimo. Otsimo is how it's spelled. And I will post all of these in the show notes as well, so that you can also take a look at them and see which ones you might be able to put to good use. And then finally, let's think about apps for relaxation, right? I've looked at apps for meditation, calming, anti-anxiety apps for myself, but it's kind of funny. I never thought to really do that for Drayson. So there are actually apps out there for relaxation. Magic Fluids is one of them. And I really like this app because it lets your child relax while there's a colorful screen visual. It's almost like swirling colors. It's very mesmerizing to watch, actually. In fact, one time we were watching it and, Drayson kind of dozed off to sleep, and I realized that he was already past it and over it, and I was the one that was mesmerized by watching all the colors on the screen. So Magic Fluids is a great app just to kind of decompress, take your mind off of things. It's a great way to relax. And then there's another app called Smiling Mind. And I really like this app because it shows children how to stay calm with guided breathing exercises. When Drayson used to show a lot of points of frustration, we actually incorporated a social story for him on what he could do to help relax and not feel nervous or not feel scared or not feel, all these different emotions that he might feel, especially when he gets angst. So Smiling Mind is a great application to show your children how to stay calm and to do breathing exercises. But I had to implement the social story first before then he was able to use that app, if that makes sense. So he had to understand that there were steps that he had to take and that he could take deep breaths. But then once he learned that, we did some kind of pre groundwork with that. And then we were able to implement this application with guided breathing exercises for him. So just a couple things to keep in mind for that. But I pose the question to you, do you have an app that you like to use, or have you found an app that works really well? And if so, I would love to know. So feel free to drop a comment below for those of you watching on YouTube today of some of the apps that you enjoy using and maybe they've worked well for your kiddo, just so that we can let other parents and people in the autism community know what apps are working well for who, and maybe gives people some insight on trying something new as well. This concludes our episode for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you would like to hear about, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. Feel free to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you haven't done so already. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Pieces for My Puzzle. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word to others in the community and feel free to give us a good rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice. We really appreciate that. Once again, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, keep working on your puzzle. And remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.